Russell Little, welcome back, brother. How you
Thank you.
doing?
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. I actually was talking about this show on my Facebook author page that I was going to be on it.
Yeah,
That I was always surprised when I was on your show.
yeah. I gotta give so much love to you and gratitude because you keep mentioning me on platforms, without my knowledge, and I truly appreciate that. Just getting that feedback means, that the show, that the work I'm doing, the mandate that I have in the creator space is moving in the right direction. So I really appreciate that, Russell. Thank you
Well,
so
you're
much for your
welcome.
love and support.
You're welcome. You're very impressive. You're a worker. You work. You're working on your craft. It's very impressive, and I love being on your show.
Well, look, I mean, if I didn't have phenomenal creators such as yourself coming on the show, what would Kino Isaac be worth? We make it happen collectively. Collectively together, we make it happen. And that's how we're growing and innovating in the space in this changing world. So thank you as well. Thank you as well. You know, um, something funny before we get started. So I manage three podcasts, right? And at times, a guest on this podcast will be invited on one of the other podcasts. And I always refer to them as an OG. So I would like to welcome back an OG because they've been on either one of the three shows before. And the last time I mentioned OG, but it was actually a joke. So the co-host was like, what is an OG? And the guess was, it means old goat. And I'm like, no, it does not mean old goat. And then she's like, no, I'm joking. It means
No,
old
you
gangster.
were joking, and it
Oh.
doesn't mean oh go. And you shouldn't use OG if they don't know what it is, because that's just not cool.
Yeah, but it became a laughing moment, just like it's a laughing moment now. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, listeners, we got OG, we got another OG back on the
And
Kino
see,
Isaac
that's very
podcast.
confusing. That's very confusing because I do look like an old goat. So it's very
Nah,
confusing.
I've been checking you on like Authors Talk, which we're going to touch on soon, and age is just a number. It's how young you are at heart. How passionate you are about what you do. Living
Now,
your best life.
I do not believe in that because that's a cliche, and I'm an anti cliche. But I do have to ask you a question. When's the last time you went surfing?
Surfing.
Yeah.
I have never been surfing.
Well, then you're not cool. I learned to surf at 55 and I love surfing. And so instead of the cliche, it's not, it's just a number. I'll just say I'm a surfer and you're not.
Yeah. Okay, I feel you. I feel you. The thing is, like, I'm in Johannesburg, so in South Africa, so we don't have a sea. And when I do get to the sea, surfing is not the first thing that comes to mind. But we've actually brought up something that I should do. I should try out. You know,
Yes. I
Next time
learned
I'm
at
down in,
55. You can learn too.
yeah, I should give it a try. I should really give it a try.
And
Yeah,
it's a
you
rush.
know. So, how was the first time for you? Out of curiosity, were you flowing with the waves, or were you jumping in the waves?
Okay. I cheated because I
Yeah,
believe in the cheats of life. And I mean, that's why I was such a good lawyer because I figure out the ways to get what I want without having to square all the corners. And the way
yeah,
I did it was I hired a personal guide that, see, when you surf, there's certain magic waves and the other waves aren't. And the trick, one of the big parts of surfing is to know which wave is the right wave. And it's not the wave you think. It's not necessarily the biggest or the one that as it's coming in has the most flight. Uh, but after you've done it a while, you know it, and so I hired someone to go out with me and say, this is the wave. And I got up the first time. I got up every time. I only did the rookie stupid thing of every time riding the surfboard too far in. So I hit the beach and almost cracked my head every time. But besides that, it was great fun.
And this is in Texas. So you were surfing in
No,
Texas.
you cannot surf in Texas. The Gulf of Mexico is not a real surf place. I went to San
Yeah.
Diego to Paradise Beach, which is one of the greatest places for novices to surf in the whole world. It's beautiful.
Okay.
It's about 6 foot, 10 foot waves. Sounds scary, but not if you're surfing. And but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
bigger and it won't kill you if you're careful.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You mentioned the Gulf of Mexico. Isn't it the Gulf of America now? Something like that?
Okay, the last time we talked, I lived in Georgia. I have since moved halfway across the North American continent back to
Right, right,
Texas
right.
because that's where my grandchildren are. And I'm a native Texan. My wife's a native Texan. Texans would always call it the Gulf of Mexico. It's because it's a
Yeah,
part of our blood. The Gulf of Mexico is a part of Texas, and it's the Gulf of Mexico. It's just the way it is. So it won't ever
yeah,
be referred to differently than for me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I am going to try out surfing the next time I go to the sea. That is what I'm going to do. That is my
But
promise to you. I am
but
going to try it out.
okay, well, two things. Number one, get a personal guide to do it, so you'll have fun and you'll get up right away. Only do it for 3 or 4 hours, not the whole day, because trust me, you're not in good enough shape to do it all day. After about
Yeah.
3 hours, you're gonna be done. Okay, so get a personal guide and then book me on the show afterwards with pictures so we can I can criticize you.
Wow. Don't you just love the show? How spontaneous we can be, you know, talking about surfing. Okay, okay. I will definitely do that. I will definitely do that. But I have a feeling I'm going to fall the first time. I do have that feeling.
Well, you
It's like we're
will,
going to
but
skate for the first time.
if you're smart, you'll fall before you get too close to the beach. Because trust me, when you surf too far in and instead of hitting the water, you hit the land, it hurts like heck. And
Yeah.
I'd say
But I
something else, but
wouldn't,
I don't.
yeah, but I wouldn't mind falling, if you compare it to life, whatever your purpose, whatever your dream may be, you're going to fall many times before you are just flowing. Correct? You're gonna
Well,
fail,
unless
you're
you
gonna fail,
cheat,
you're gonna
unless you cheat the
fall.
way I did.
Oh, there's that. Oh, there's that. Which is something. Yeah, I'm gonna mention. In the book industry, really soon. But Russell, for the listeners, as I said, he's an OG, and I'm going to tag our first conversation to this podcast as well on Spotify. Check it out, listeners. It was a phenomenal conversation. We touched on your book in the first episode, Murder by Storm. So, how has Murder by Storm and Marilyn been doing since you released the book?
It's great. I received the overall fire award. The book won the fire award, which was a big deal. Uh, I was so shocked that when they called me on air and told me, I just stared at them. And they were like, and so kind of disappointed. They wanted me to say, I was too shocked to say yay. I was stunned. Uh, so, but I won the Fire Award. It was a bestseller. And
Nice.
uh, this, Murder by Storm is a psycho murder thriller during a hurricane. And the hurricane that I put it in was Hurricane Harvey that hit the Texas coast this exact time 8 years ago. Right now, the hurricane was over us, pounding us.
Yeah, yeah,
It's the hurricane I was writing about, which is a big deal because that hurricane changed my life for 100 good reasons.
yeah. Well, I mean, congratulations. I'm going to clap again. Congratulations on the award. Well done. Well
Thank
done.
you.
Well done. I'm glad that the book has been doing so well. For listeners who want to get to know, once again, Russell, a bit better, tap into his personal life and more about the book, I will, mentioning it again, I will tag the first episode to this podcast on Spotify for you to check it out. So, I mean, yeah, as I said, pre show, I just wanted to touch on the book, check where you're at the moment, how's it going? Is there any more projects like on the table that you're working on
Well,
currently, or as a follow
uh,
up to the book?
I'm writing the next book, Murder by Trial, which is about there's a couple of things I wanted to do in that case. I don't know. Have you ever read Dungeons of the Confederacy? It was a Pulitzer Prize winning book written in the 20s. Have
No,
you ever read it?
no,
Well,
no, no.
there's a character in this book that is so awful in not any gross way, not in any evil way, just no connection to what reality is, just an awful person. But the character is unforgettable. They're so awful. And I've always wanted to write about a character like that. And I've got that guy in my next book. It's the kind of
Right.
person that is just grosses you out, but he's also the one that you think about that comes up to in your mind while you're taking a shower because it's just always there. And I think I found this character and it's in my next book. And it's also about a strange thing about jury trials, especially in the West. And that is the the public. If you're in the public and you hear about a decision that a jury makes in a trial, sometimes you're outraged. How can they make that decision? But as someone who's tried a couple of hundred trials, 100 jury trials, the one thing that is known within the business is there's lots of truth and facts and they're not the same. There's the facts about a trial that the public knows. There's much different set of facts or additional facts that a few of the lawyers and the judge know, and the jury that makes the final decision sometimes has a totally different set of facts, different than the true facts or the facts the public knows when they make their decision. And that's what my next book's about.
Yeah, yeah. Are you familiar with Desmond Tutu from South Africa?
Of course I am.
Yeah. So it was during the transition, from the apartheid government, to democracy. And it was, I don't exactly remember which commission it was. And he said there's four types of truths. You know, one truth is what I believe, one truth is what you believe, another truth is what the community believe. But the truth that really matters the most is what are the facts, on the table. The fourth truth is more spiritual, but it's some things that I just use, in my day-to-day life, and I feel, with attorneys as well, all that really matters in the end is the truth, and who can sell the truth the best,
That
their
is
version of the
kind of the
truth.
truth, but I can tell you, and this is true, which I said not as some kind of joke, but because it is true. When uh, a client came to hire me over those 40 years, they didn't hire me to seek the truth. They didn't hire me for justice. Most of my clients do not want justice. They hired me to win. That's what I'm hired to do. I'm hired to win. I'm not hired to
Yeah,
seek justice. I'm not hired to play fair. I'm not hired for any other reason than to win.
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
that's what the clients that go to court that hire me for. They don't want so most of them don't want justice.
They just want you to win. They just
They
want
want
you
me
to
to
win.
win. But I
They
had
want.
heard. I'd heard that saying before, and that's a famous saying all around the world. And the
Yeah.
other project I'm doing is Author Talk, which is the podcast that I've been on for the last 9 years. Uh, in January, it'll be a 10-year-old podcast, and we're like top 10% on some of the podcast channels for independent books, which is a lot the same thing that you do. And I'm dying to
Yeah.
have you on our show. And
Yeah.
we've had a subject for the last six months that you'll have guests like you have me on now. But before we get to that, just like you and I got to surfing, we have another subject that we got on about 6 months ago that I would love to talk to you about.
And would you love to talk about it now or a bit later?
I would love to talk to you about it right now. And
Right
that
now.
is,
Yeah.
it first came up when uh, I was studying book festivals. Book festivals are a is usually mainly for old people in the United States. But in India, book festivals are something the 20 somethings and 30 somethings do. And it's like giant rock concerts for multiple days. It's a huge
Yeah.
thing, it's a part of their culture. There's authors there, but they have bands, they have concerts, they have alcohol drinking, they have food trucks. It's a
Wow.
huge multiple day party. I started talking about that on the show, and then I was like, why don't we have this in the United States? Because
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
articles that I read from India were writing about how it's really kicked in, that the fact that people are reading less, and you know that all over the world, except in India, that trend is stopped. The 20 somethings and 30 somethings are going crazy reading because it's a part of this new culture, just like these giant book festival parties are a part of their culture now. And
Yeah.
in the United States, it's something that mainly old people go to. And so I started, okay, where do we have festivals like that? And it came up that during one romance festival that I was looking at, they had a tattoo artist. And I was like, why do they have tattoo artists at book festivals? Do you know
Yeah.
why?
I have no idea. This is the first
Right.
time I ever heard, like, okay, as you were saying, okay, like, I mean, when you say book festival in the states, you would think, okay, it's more of your older generation that will attend, some sort of gathering, and there'll be authors there, and they'll be promoting their books or
Some
signing books
people.
for buyers. But now when you're talking about, music and drinking, I'm like, really? Something like this
Yeah.
actually exists in the world?
Yes. In India, it's a big thing. I'm dying to go to one in India the next time I go to India, but that's another story.
Yeah.
So I saw, so I was on the show and I asked, why in this at this romance festival do they have a tattoo artist? And the younger women on the show started laughing at me. I still, I was still clueless. And they were like, you're so stupid. Uh, Romance fans are a whole different breed. And many of them, especially young women, actually have the covers of the books they love or famous quotes from the books they love tattooed on their body. And I'm like, what? What?
Wow.
Yeah. And
But
then go ahead.
no, no, I was going to make an assumption. When we look at art, tattoo is also a form of art. So combining the two is like, starting a new trend,
I
which can be cool.
guess.
Can be
But
cool.
and as you're an artist, I understand. But uh as an 68-year-old lawyer, I've never heard of that, and it was inconceivable to me. So I was like, I got to know more. All right. So
Yeah.
it turns out then that This is from a subgenre of romance fantasy or dark romance fantasy. Have you ever heard of those?
Dark romance fantasy. I have, you know, read that somewhere. I don't know what the books are about, but dark romance. And when I try to define what dark romance means, I'm thinking a relationship that was, I don't know, a relationship that wasn't supposed to happen, where there's maybe family politics involved, and then you elope with the person that you love with, some
Are you
sort of
talking
dark
about
relation,
Romeo and Juliet?
something similar but a bit more darker.
Okay, you're pretty
There's a
sharp.
movie. There's a movie. Wait, there's a movie. You know the movie series The Crow, but the latest one that came out in 2024. Yeah, it was last year. If someone had to tell me what is dark romance, and then I had to make an assumption, I would actually reference that movie.
Well, you that movie's probably not dark enough to be within the genre of dark romance. It's uh it's usually it's it's usually trigger warning level uh subjects within romance. And it's even to a level where they have trigger warning pages before you read the book that says if you have any problems with these subjects, don't read the book.
And what are those subjects?
Uh, Rape,
Wow, is that how
enemy to
dark it
lover,
goes?
uh, and we're talking about that level is within the genre.
So I was completely
You were
far away.
not completely wrong because the entry level of that to that genre is exactly as you described it. And
Wow.
see, and so I've
Okay.
learned all this, and this is why. And so I go from trying to do festivals to finding out about that there's tattoo artists at romance festivals to learning about this. And then recently on the show, we actually had an assistant to dark romance authors on the show that we started interviewing who was telling us about the authors that write these books. And so we've gone deep into this, and this isn't one of the reasons why, and you're going to call me a liar about this, is that 80% of the fiction books sold in the United States right now are romance fantasy.
Romance fantasy fiction books.
80% of the fiction books sold in the United States are romance fantasy. I didn't believe it when someone told me that, and I triple checked them because I couldn't believe it.
The extent of the industry is a big wow to me, eh? It's a big wow to me. So let's just say, because we have kids today, right, that love to read, and they walk into a bookstore and
Do
this
we?
dark romance section.
I didn't know we had kids that loved to read. Uh, but obviously I was wrong because they love to read it so much that they tattoo the stuff on their arm.
Well, there's a good percentage. There's a good percentage. Um, how do we control this in the industry? I walk into a bookstore. I'm 13, 14 years old, and there's a section on dark romance. I'm intrigued. Is there
There's
any
not.
sort of control?
There
There's
is
no
not
control on that.
section on. There is not a section on dark romance.
So you won't find a
I
section.
actually went into a Barnes and Noble, a brand new giant, ultra modern Barnes and Noble uh, in Houston, Texas, to see if there was a section for dark romance. Well, there's not. So I thought, well, maybe there's a subsection where in that area where in the romance section, which took up like four times more space than any other genre in the whole bookstore. And there is no sub. markers saying dark romance. But
Yeah.
when I asked female family members about it that were with me, they knew exactly which books were dark romance. What I didn't know, I still don't know if they read it, but they knew all about it. And last night at dinner, I brought the subject up again in a huge, large group, and the women all knew about dark romance, knew the entry level dark romance, so they when they go to the bookstores, they know where it is. I'm actually wouldn't be inclined to control it. If you want to read it or write it, that's your business, not my business. So I'm fine with it. I'm just stunned that 80% of the books sold in America are dark romance, or not dark romance, romance fantasy, which includes dark romance.
This is what I'm thinking about right now. 50 Shades of Grey. Would
Yes,
you consider that dark
that is a
romance?
romance fantasy.
Right. Because, there, like you mentioned, rape, okay, but not rape to the extent where it's like a complete force. But I mean, there is scenes of that. But I would consider, 50 Shades of Grey, under dark romance. And look how well that did. I mean, when the first movie was released, people went crazy, mainly females, but they went crazy. They went crazy over it.
Yeah,
I mean, the franchise became what, $1 million, $1 billion? You know
yeah, and the romance industry is that way now too. I mean,
exactly. And
it's the huge, big, largest part of the fiction uh, business in America and most of the world. It's I'm just stunned. When it's like wake had being a blind man and being able to see for the first time and seeing light and being shocked at what it looks like. It's just
yeah,
stunning.
yeah, dark romance, and once again I'm going to reference the 50 Shades series, has changed how people are in relationships these days. Because when the first movie was released, and this is before people read the book, I read the book and I watched the movie. I watched all the movies.
Could you
Okay.
read the book?
uh,
Because I couldn't get
I read
20
the first
pages in
book.
the book. It was so
Yeah.
terrible.
I read the first book. I never read the other books, but I watched all the movies. But it changed, people's relationships with each other, because people wanted their relationship to be just as it is in the book, just as it is in the movie. And that's the truth. That's the truth.
I
It's
believe
trending.
you.
It's still
I just
trending.
can't imagine it. I'm an old man. I've been married 42 years. I can't
Yeah.
imagine it.
Yeah. I mean, people's sex lives changed, and this is also based on research after 50 Shades went so viral.
I did read that. I did read that. And I also read a
Yeah.
lot about the extra conflicts it created, but in couples' relationships, when one member of the relationship wanted something like 50 Shades of Grey and the other one didn't.
Yep. Yep. And if we look at the divorce rate worldwide, it's on a rise, right? It's on a rise. So if I want that type of relationship and I'm not getting it from my partner at the moment, that leads me to cheating. Cheating leads me to divorce. And that's just what's been happening, you know, in South Africa, around the world. That trend is climbing. It's climbing. But yeah, we have connected the dots here with dark romance. You know, we really connected the dots, with you bringing it up and then referencing it to, like, 50 Shades of Grey, what it actually means, what it entails, and the impact that those stories actually make in reality. You don't even need to watch a movie now for it to impact, the world. Now you read a book and you're like, that's why it's called fantasy, fantasy. So I want that fantasy in my reality. You sum that up.
I
Sum that
don't know
up.
how to, I don't know what
Us.
else to say. It's just that is I did,
Wow.
and I did know what that you were quite a philosopher, and so it's just nice to hear you philosophize. I just didn't realize this would be one of the things that you would have. Uh, You would have
I,
so much knowledge of once we got into it.
yeah, because I love to connect the dots on any topic. You know, connecting the dots meaning is that look, if I see a certain trend happening in society that's on a rise, I want to connect the dots that what initiated that rise. So now, when you bringing up dark romance and giving the proper definition of what it was, and then saying that I wasn't too far off as well, and then bringing in 50 Shades of Grey, it made me think, I would consider that dark romance, and then I see how it's impacted relationships globally, and what's the expectations, from a female, and also wouldn't say what's the expectations from. Okay, yeah, also maybe expectations from a good percentage of males as well on how they actually go about their sex life. You
Well, I
know,
got a question. I have a
that's
question for
crazy.
you. I have a question for you. Is
Yeah,
okay, how many authors do you interview in a month? I mean, is any of this a subject that you've come across, you've talked about? Have you interviewed any of these authors? And my next question is, why haven't you, and are you going to? Because they're the ones selling all the books. They're the ones whose fans will listen to your podcast the most because they're so excited about those books that they're tattooing their pictures and their quotes on their body.
yeah, yeah. Well, to answer your first questions, I mean, I'm averaging 4 to 5 authors, per month.
That's what I
Okay,
thought.
yeah, per month. But I love authors like yourself that can be like so, spontaneous and diverse. And then we jump into the psychology behind all the writing that's going on. And that's what I love. Like, I'm intrigued. I'm in love with psychology. You know, the world is run by psychology,
I thought it was run
so.
by money.
Well, the psychology behind money as well. You know, it's like a person doesn't do a certain act, unless it's triggered by some form of art, no matter what that art may be:
Ah,
music, books,
I love that.
sculptures, paintings. You know, we look back in history. I can't remember which podcast it actually was. It was talking back to suicide. And the topic was suicide over love. And I had to reference it back to Romeo and Juliet. I had to reference it back to literature way before my time, way before your time. If we look at Romeo and Juliet, which you mentioned earlier, so that was suicide because of love, and now it still happens in 2025. But let's look at the psychology. Let's look at the history. It's not something that started 10 or 20 years ago, for someone to commit suicide because their girlfriend or boyfriend left them, or a marriage ended. This started generations ago, and it's still trending, just in different forms and ways. So that's what I love to do. I love to connect the dots. When I see something happening in society, I'm like, this never started now. This came from some part of history. It came from art. And that's the impact of art in society, you know, any form of art. It's created our reality, you know.
Uh,
But
I,
anyway, this was insightful. This was insightful. Only Kino and Russell can jump into such a topic. Eh? Wow.
you're such a
So
philosopher.
now, man, and yeah, and this is the first time, like we've actually gone into that. So thank you for bringing it up. Thank you for bringing it up. Russell, let's talk about your podcasting career, okay? And when I first saw you on Authors Talk with Amy, I always thought, no, that you were just like a featured guest. You were there and so on. And on Monday, Mickey, Amy, and myself had a meeting, now that I'm back online. And Amy mentioned, no, that, she does the podcast with you. So I was like, okay, cool. When I meet Russell on Friday, I'm actually going to bring up, his podcasting career because I never know that. So, what is Authors Talk? What is the purpose of Authors Talk? What is the mandate of Authors Talk? What's it all about?
Okay, I'm sorry for the camera moving. I have this
No,
giant dog that is just woke up from her nap, so I'm sorry about that.
no, it's
Uh,
fine.
Authors Talk was started 9 years ago when I suggested to what was Amy's boss at the time that we start a podcast, not on the podcast channels, but just one on Facebook. And so we started it, and it started off interviewing new authors in the Texas area, is how it started, right? Just local authors. And it was a really bad show because we and Amy was the cameraman, and Amy was so it's funny now that you think it's Amy's show because it is Amy's show.
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's not
yeah,
because it is now,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
back then she was the cameraman, and she was too shy to say anything or to be on camera. So as the show went on, after a few months, it was obvious that we wanted Amy on the show, but she wouldn't be on the show. So I started thinking of dirty tricks to trick her into first briefly being on the show, and then just continually adding to the tricks till she was a part of the show. And so after the course of about 1 year, it went from Amy being the cameraman and Sandy Lawrence and I being on the show to now, then it was the three of us on the show interviewing a new author with a new book, a lot like what you do every week. And we've done that every week for 9 years.
Nice.
Sandy retired and Amy took over is like the producer. And Amy's more than that. Amy is the scheduler, producer. It's a part of the synergy of her business. And I would love for you to talk about the synergy of your podcast with your business because that's how it is with her. It's part of the synergy. So like when she and Mickey met with you, and she referred to author talk, it was a part of the menu of what she does, right? And
Yeah,
that's the beauty of it, and that's the way I always wanted it. I didn't really want it for myself. uh, I just like to talk and meet new authors, but first with Sandy and then with Amy, I thought it would be a great way for them to promote themselves because they're wonderful people. And you know this, in this business, in writing and trying to publish books, especially new authors, there's a lot of sharks out there. So when there's somebody that's an honest person that uh, you can count on their word, they're they're important because they're not going to steal from you. And so I wanted to promote. Sandy was that way, Amy's that way, Mickey's that way. They're wonderful people, and I like being associated with them. And and so that's a part of the show too. So your conclusion was right. Now it is. I've been on the show for 9 years. Uh, I love the show, but Amy's the producer of the show. So you were not wrong when you concluded that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You would never say that Amy was shy once upon a time to talk or
Oh,
be in front
she's
of a
so
camera.
shy.
You
She's
would never say,
still, trust
right?
me, she is so shy. And she's actually a very shy woman, except
Yeah.
for she's very professional. And that's why you don't think she is. But when she's not doing her work, she could be very shy unless you make her angry. And then the game's over. You know,
Yeah,
the game's over if you make her angry. So,
yeah. Because I mean, the first time I came across her, I just see Mickey, CCing Amy on email because I was only dealing with Mickey. And the meeting that we were on Monday was the first time, I was in the same room as Amy. But then when I saw authors talk, I'm like, she's great at what she does. She flows. Great
she is
conversations I
great.
have. So when you're telling me that there was once upon a time that she was shy to be in front of the camera and talk. I'm thinking, huh?
It was terrible. It was a bad show. Amy made it a lot better. But I actually had to I actually had made a part of the show that it was her part, and that way she was forced to turn the camera on herself and to do that part of the show. That was I was, you know, I
Yeah.
connived against her. But that's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm a sneak. I'm a lawyer. It's my job.
I'm a lawyer. I get what you were saying, when you were explaining, it's part of, her overall brand or overall business. I get that. It's the same as this podcast. The Kino
Yes, I've
podcast.
always wondered what the synergy of your podcast with the rest of your business is.
Yeah, because all the podcast is a component of the business. You know, it's a component of the business. Whereas, okay, look, Amy focuses on authors. Abundantly social. Podcast falls as a component of what we're doing. You know, and that's what I also try to explain. To a lot of people out there. There's different types of podcasters. Some have some podcasts just like Amy and myself, which is a component linked to a parent company, a parent name, a parent business. Where others are just podcasting for the sake of let me try to get myself monetized on YouTube, whatever. The one podcasters I really don't like personally myself, who spend too much time on the editing because they want to monetize it so much, and you lose out on the organic conversations and the laughs and the truths, like how you and I have been rolling, since we hit record. So I get that. I completely get that. So thank you for telling me, more about Authors Talk and what it's about. I know we were focusing on 45 minutes, so I just want to touch on one more thing with regards to Authors Talk from a book business point of view. One of the concerns that's been coming up, on my show, and I mean, it never started when I started bringing authors. It was the reason I started the Kino as a consulting agency for independent musicians, producers, songwriters, and so on, is closing the gap between vanity metrics and how many streams or how many books I'm actually selling. Because I can jump onto a podcast, right? Or 10 podcasts. Let's just say I do 10 podcasts each and every single month because I want to promote my book or I want to promote my music or I want to promote my record label, whatever it may be. And I put out a post and I'm out there and wow, I'm checking, okay, I got 200 views on this post. Now I'm checking, okay, I got 1,000 likes on this post. Then what I tell artists to do after that is I say, okay, now go to your Spotify for Artists account. Look at how many streams you accumulated in that same period when you posted that video or had that interview. And then when they look at that, they're like, there's only been 2 streams. And I'm like, vanity metrics. Stop focusing on vanity metrics. I'm not saying don't post. I'm not saying don't get onto those interviews. What I'm saying is make sure it's balancing. Don't focus so much on putting content out and getting vanity metrics when it's not really bringing in revenue. So, what would be your opinion, being someone that's been in the business for so long, in closing the gap now for independent authors?
Okay, number one, I have to say is your analysis is brilliant. And I would love for you to come on Author Talk or other shows where I'm on and only talk, not, don't talk about any of the other subjects, just that, just that. That
Okay.
is something nobody else talks about and is completely true. And Amy and I privately talk about that a lot, about that subject a lot, but that's not something that you can discuss, and that's something that all new authors, all wannabe authors, all frustrated authors, and 99% of the authors, because they sold 500 books and then that's all they sold, they everyone needs to hear. Uh,
Yeah.
and, and I agree with what you're saying. I don't think that being on, and you actually said this without saying it, being on podcast alone won't do it. That's a part of the recipe of success. But being on, but because otherwise it's vacuous, right? Uh,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I think you have to have a recipe that includes that, that includes uh, a social media, but it's got to include other things like uh personal reaching out, and also on the complete opposite of that, understanding algorithms and how to use them, because I'm a big algorithm guy. I believe in algorithms. There's no reason not to, since it controls everything in our lives, whether you want it to or not, and whether
Yeah.
you know it or not. Algorithms control everything. So the way to sell books, if that is your purpose, is to understand algorithms and how to manipulate them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that, like, when I sold my first book, that's the main thing. I didn't do podcast uh on my first book. I manipulated algorithms. That's how I sold books. uh and there's certain ways you do that, and it's like, which algorithms do you target? And if people are listening, they're saying, what do you mean? Which algorithms? Number one, where are those algorithms, and who's making them, and where are they? Well, you make your own algorithms out of your activity. And I'm referring to where people buy books, which is specifically and mainly Amazon, right?
Yeah.
And that algorithm, how you control and manipulate that algorithm is how you sell books. Podcast is very important, especially if you catch fire. I don't know. Have you ever, is one of your uh, posts or podcasts ever gone viral on you? If that happens, that's one thing. Like there was this old man selling this particular book uh, in America at a grocery store, and it was independently published, and a very famous uh, social TikToker went by and met him and posted a TikTok of this old man in his book in a very funny light. This happened just last year, and she wound up with like 1 million hits on it. And the guy was a bestseller because of it, because everyone would see this TikTok, they'd order that book from Amazon, right?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
mean, you never know. But uh see, it's a really complicated subject. I would love to get you on our show to talk more about this. It's complicated.
Yeah. Those are what we call now the influences of society. The concern I have is your average up and coming, independent author or independent musician, can't afford to pay an influencer, right? If you can afford as an author to pay an influencer, you are definitely going to boost your sales. There's no doubt about that. I can give an influencer this bottle of water. It can be the worst water ever. But if I get an influencer to promote this on their social media accounts, it's going to sell. It's definitely going to sell. You see, um, there was one thing you mentioned about like an author having the purpose of selling books. I don't believe anyone that's ever come on the show, whether they be in the book business, whether they be in the music business, where that's their purpose. But I want them to also sustain themselves financially with their career. Because what tends to happen on the music business side of stuff is that once they don't see the sales happening, they tend to give up on their career. So now
Well,
on the
they got to
music
pay the
business,
bills, right?
yeah, exactly. So on the music business side of things, I can guide an artist how to market their music because it's getting streamed. It's not a physical product. So I already know the method. So if an artist comes to me, to the agency and be like, look, I've created the music, I've put it on Spotify, it's on shelf, whatever, which they don't understand. Once you put the music onto the DSPs or once you put your book onto Amazon, that's like the easy part. You still have to market it. You still have to build a brand around it, right? You still have to get people there. You need to utilize ads on social media as well to get people there, let them
Yeah,
know it's there.
I'm a big
But
believer
I
in
mean,
that.
yeah, but I mean, I've mastered how to, get people more streams. It's a non-physical product. The thing is now, it's getting people to buy a physical item. Whether it be an ebook or whether it be a physical book, it's for the people now to
Right,
buy.
right.
Yeah. And that's what I'm also trying to learn as well. You know, let me see, let me look into it, let me look at trends, let me ask questions now, to individuals such as yourself. So I can learn more about that. So when authors start, knocking on my door and be like, yo, I listened to this episode, do you have any thoughts, on how we can get our book sold? So I also now want to start educating myself. Yeah, because, you know, stop looking at vanity metrics. Stop looking at that. And that's
I
what's
like
killing
vanity
social media.
metrics. Makes me feel good about myself.
Yeah, it makes us feel good. No doubt. Makes us feel
Which is
good.
your point. That was your point. But I was like, I like it. It makes me feel good about myself.
Yeah. But unfortunately, it's not paying the bills.
It's not paying anything. It's
I'll tell you,
vacuous.
something crazy. There's an artist that nobody really knows his real name, right? On no social media platform, does not do any promotions, does not do any interviews, but has millions of streams on Spotify. You know, it just shows you. It just shows you. Now, those methods are available, and I can advise on those methods when it comes to the music industry. So now I'm trying to master, in the book industry. Let's close this gap, because if you're an inspiring writer and you're listening to an author such as Russell Little and you also want to win an award one day, there's a lot to take away from what Russell is saying from both episodes, but you also have to apply yourself, and I want to assist them in applying themselves, but comes to me also educating myself. Okay, just like how I've done it there, let me check how it works here. And you're 100% correct on algorithms. I can't say anything further on top of that. you know Algorithms is how our day-to-day life is actually run. So thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. I'm sure we will discuss it, a lot more in the future to come. To conclude, I got one more question. um the psychology. Okay, there's a book that's called, right, The Price of Greatness. It's by author Onel Ludwig. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of him. So I started reading this book, and it's crazy how the universe brings certain material into your life, because there's a touch of madness in each and every single one of us as creatives. We look back at history as well, going back to history. There is a touch of madness. Whether you be a writer, whether you be a poet, whether you be a singer, there's a touch of madness. So in this book, which I've just started, so I don't have much knowledge on it yet. I just know it's there because when I look back at my own personal career psychologically and I link it to mental illness, you know, it makes sense to me. It does make sense to me that I was supposed to experience this amount of depression or have anxiety at this period in my career or certain moments. It still happens in my career. I can be honest and transparent about it. Nothing to hide. So if you're a creator out there listening right now and there's some form of mental illness that you are struggling with at the moment, or anxiety or depression, it's natural, especially for a creator. I highly believe in that. So now he goes on to say, okay, fiction writers are more likely to commit suicide. Non-fiction writers are more likely to suffer with depression. What's your thoughts on that? So
Well,
non-fiction, suicide,
I think
fiction, depression. No,
I
no,
just
no,
think
sorry, sorry, I got that wrong. Fiction writers, suicide, non-fiction, depression.
I think fiction writers are artists, like you're an artist, and that artists have their quirks, just like everyone else. It's just different ones are accentuated. It's just that we don't want to be like Van Gogh. You don't want to be Van Gogh. You don't want it to get that out of control, right? But uh, I have always been felt empowered and strengthened by my creative side. I love that I have it. And I am always stunned by those who seem to not want it or to look down on it. They always shock me because it's great to be us, right? It's great to
Yeah.
be us. It's great to be you, isn't it? I mean, we all have our issues, we all have our problems, we all have our families, we all have our situations we have to deal with, but it's the way we are and everyone like us, it's great to be us. That's always been my attitude.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like I get the fiction part, you know, like, you know, oh no, sorry, the non-fiction part of leading to depression. Because as a non-fiction, you know, you would be writing something that's based on an experience that's happened in your life, which can make you depressed. So I'm going to continue with this book now. You know, I just wanted your thoughts on it, on
I'm actually
why
reading.
fiction
We have
writers.
this in common. We're actually reading the same kind of books. I'm actually reading right now Van Gogh in Paris. So see,
Okay.
we're actually reading. I'm reading a nonfiction book about this depressed, uh, genius painter while he's in Paris. You're reading a nonfiction analysis of it. We're reading about the same stuff. That's ironic.
Yeah.
I do
Yeah,
have
you
this
know
monster dog that's about to drag me out of here. So I,
what? Yeah, no, no, 100%. You know, as we close up, you know, and this is, um, you know, what this component of like my business is for, is to jump into the serious factors of being a creator and how can we resolve them. You know, in two interviews that I've done over the 2 weeks, I told people I am not in the business of producing music. I am in the business of producing sustainable, healthy futures for creatives.
ooh, that's
That is the
good.
business I
I
am in.
like that. I like that.
You know, because you can put a great book out there, you can put a great song out there, a great album out there, but if you don't fix yourself psychologically, whatever you may be going through up here or in here, you know, it's going to affect your career down the line. If we look at the greats of history, once again, even modern greats, you know, within the creative space who have committed suicide, you know, and then you ask yourself, but you would think on the outside as a fan, like he or she had it all, you know, performing all over the world, touring the world, and next thing you know, suicide or serious depression. But it's part of, you know, being a creative. You know, some put it down to the overwhelmment of the crowds and traveling a lot, whatever it may be. But it's something much more deeper and, you know, something I personally, you know, going to be touching on, you know, on the book side of stuff. Russell, this has been another phenomenal conversation. Is there anything that you would love to conclude with?
I'm sorry that I have to struggle with my giant puppy. She's 9 months old. It's a huge dog,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I I I've looked forward to this all week, and I hope you have a great weekend. I hope everyone listening has a great weekend. Uh, I You're such a philosopher.
That's a new one for me. That's a new one for me. Let me put that down. Kino, you are a philosopher now. That's a new one for me. Russell, thank you. Do you want to mention once again where can, when I say once again, because you mentioned it the first time that we met, where can people find you online? And also just mention, authors talk when it's aired each week and at what time. Is it at a set time that people can
It's
check
on
that out?
all week. It's on all podcast channels. Author Talk. Uh, come over and listen on all podcast channels. If they want to find out about me day to day, they can go to russelllittleauthor.com, or the best place to go is Russell's Stories, which is my Facebook author page, which I mentioned about being on your show before I got on the show this morning. So uh
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
let you know what I'm reading, what I'm thinking, what show I'm going to be on, what I think about the show, and about Isaac being such a philosopher.
Russell, you have so much positive energy, I just want to put that out there. So much positive energy. Like you are just like this bright light for all of us in the space, and I'm
Thank
grateful
you.
for that. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution, to all creators all over the world, to the listeners of the show, to my life personally. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I hope, yeah, right back at you. Have a great day. Have a phenomenal weekend. And I wish you all the best. And as I always tell all the guests that come onto the show, it's not the conversation. It's not the last conversation. So we will speak again.
Well, we know that.
You know that. Russell, thanks again. I really appreciate it. Have an awesome day.
You have a good day too.
All right. Bye.